So how are you, sir? You all right?
Yes, all right, thank you. Yeah.
Good. You've grown your beard a bit since the last time we talked.
Yes, it's part of my mission to see how far I can get before Sharon tells me to trim it. So, and to be honest, if she even notices, let's be honest, gents, let's be honest. So I reckon I'll be Captain Birdseye by the end of the year.
Or ZZ Top, maybe?
Yeah, I'm up for that, definitely.
And get the hat and the sunglasses too.
All right, the beard. But I won't talk about Chelsea because clearly we're both lovers of that football club, and it's shocking what went on there. Although I am talking about it. I don't know.
You boss, right?
Well, no, they've changed the manager, and probably unfairly so. I would say
Frank Lampard, right? I don't watch football that much, but that one did catch my ear.
Well, there's a really interesting analogy with business. If any of us chopped and changed our managers as frequently as Chelsea did, we'd get absolutely nowhere, have zero staff loyalty. Our investors would question our sanity. But of course, when you're a company stroke football club that's pretty much owned by one individual who's got all the money in the world, then maybe you can treat it as a toy and
keep moving the goalposts.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that if we were in a situation where there were fans in the stadium at the moment, I'd imagine half of them would have torn up their season tickets and kind of just not gone to the games, because I just think it's disgusting. I also feel for the new guy coming in. I mean, I don't feel for the fact that he's probably on a major salary, but he's going to have to do a lot to turn people around, because I really do think that,
motion detected at the front door.
And hello, who's that?
Sorry, that's Alexa telling
Sharon.
me I've got somebody. That's Sharon leaving to get me a razor blade.
Okay, is that how you communicate these days, Richard?
It is.
Through the Alexa.
I did. It was funny the other day. Oh, hang on. So Alexa, she's now started playing music. It's brilliant.
Is it ZZ Top?
Alexa, stop. So
would have been good if it was ZZ Top.
In between the 400 lockdowns that we've had, I was on a train coming out of Liverpool Street, having set up. We've got, I think, 9 devices from that lady. Around, if I mention her name, she'll start talking to me around the house, and I hadn't appreciated that I could make an announcement around the house, no matter where I was in the world. So, to my fantastic amusement, to the utter disgust and frustration of my family who were still in the house, I started sending ghost type messages from the train. And got so carried away, I hadn't realised that others in the train were watching me misbehave and muck about. So,
because it's got two functions.
Was it like the train was travelling and it was like Leamington Spa, Birmingham New Street?
No, I was doing things like, I am watching you, and all this sort of stuff. Get your hands out of the biscuit jar. I know how much wine was in that bottle, and all this sort of stuff.
That is the downside of the connected home, I'd imagine. So look, I mean, look, in view of your time, because obviously you're a busy man running a very, very successful business. I just think to kick off, it's always good for our watchers and listeners to get a sort of insight into your wonderful company. Obviously, we met way back in 2016, I believe, from memory. When it was
before then, but something like that, yeah.
It might have been, because it was Avanata time, which was the business that, from memory, was a segment that morphed into SafetoNet, or some of the technology. So I mean, look, the floor is yours, in the sense that, we'd love the update on SafetoNet, where you are, how's it going, maybe the views for 2020-21, and kind of what's driving the business at the moment, and how are things?
Okay, alrighty. Oh, well, hello, everybody. I'm Richard Pursey, and I'm co-founder and now executive chairman. That's a very interesting title for me, but chairman seems to relate to very old people, and I'm a very old person, so maybe I deserve it of that role, of SafetoNet. And we are a cyber safety company, and the only reason why we exist is to keep children safe online. And everybody knows about the problem that we're tackling. It's one of the beauties actually of our business, is that we can explain it in just a few words: bullying, abuse, aggression, sextortion, grooming. And it's happening around the world every second of the day as we communicate now. There's over 500 million children on social networks, messaging apps, and so on right now as we speak. And of course, they're all vulnerable because they're kids. They're naive and easy to trick. So we're tackling this problem big time using artificial intelligence, and we're making sort of good inroads into it. It's a company that I'm really, really proud of. I've started and sold 4 tech businesses before this. I've become a sort of private investor. I'm a dad of 4. And any of you that are listening to this who are parents will understand the issues that I'm talking about. Maybe you've got young kids and you haven't yet given them a phone, but you're going to be worried about it, I know. If you have given them a phone, then you have no idea what they're doing on that device. You don't know who they're talking to, what they're seeing, what they're saying, what they're hearing, and so on. And so our job at SafetoNet is to not only keep the child safe, your children safe online, and that's a huge responsibility on us, and it gives us brilliant focus in our business, because that is the reason why we exist, to keep children safe online. But also it's to give you as a parent an insight into your child's digital world without you snooping or spying on them, and that's crucial. Children actually have a right to privacy, and if you don't exercise that right for them, then you know what they'll do. They'll defeat the tech, they'll go underground, they'll do all kinds of things. And I know that for a fact, because when I was a boy, which was broadly speaking 1,000 years ago, tech didn't exist like this, but I know exactly what I was like, especially as a teenager, trying to work out where I sat in life and what was going on. And I know that had I kept a diary, and don't worry, I didn't, but had I kept a diary and my mum and dad had found it, I'd have gone absolutely bananas. And knowing me, I'd have created a fake one to put them off the scent. And that's
spycraft.
That's where, yeah, we all do it, or would do it, or have thought about it, because parents, quite frankly, are a bit of a pain. They don't know as much as we teenagers do. We teenagers can walk on water, and all parents do is stop us from having fun, blah, blah, blah. So you've got to know that in our business to understand the psychology in particular of why humans do what they do, why predators do what they do and how they do it, and why children say what they do and what they're interested in and why they're exploring and why they're so easy to trick online. And this whole thing about, you know, I need more and more likes is one of the world's biggest issues, is this narcissistic sort of approach that pretty much everybody on the planet takes, is I want you to like me. And for you watching this and listening to me drone on, I really want you to like this. That's how we are as human beings. So the search for likes means that we can get trapped into doing things that maybe we wouldn't normally do. And so it's a complex problem that we're squaring up to. And as we looked at this industry, essentially what happened was I'd sold my 4th company. I became a private investor, and I've done a bit of investing in my time. I was asked to invest in a social network, the Lad Bible. Most of you have probably heard of that. Yeah. And I didn't know anything about social networks at all, and but a dad of 4. So I started doing my research, got quite into the DD, saw all kinds of horrible stuff, and it suddenly dawned on me, oh crikey, what did I do? What was I doing when I gave my child their phone? Am I nuts? Because I don't know what's going on, and you can't grab the phone off them. That's the instinct of parents. Don't grab the phone off your child, because the moment you do, you've disconnected them from their friends, from their real world, and you're going to end up with conflict, and none of us want conflict at home and all the rest of it. So I did my DD, found all these problems. Also at the time, I had the best job in the world. I volunteered as a driver. I was taking terminally ill children to hospital for treatment, and it was pretty sad. But I had quite a nice car. They were always keen for me to take them. They didn't know who I was. Not that I am anyone, but they didn't know who I was, and so they would talk to me. And there was one boy in particular that I'll never forget. He died 3 weeks after this. All of these children died. And by the way, one of the motivators, I think, for most of us in life is injustice. This is modern day Britain, where there isn't equity in the healthcare system, because if you can't afford to get to hospital for treatment, you won't get that treatment. It's as simple as that, which is one of the reasons why COVID actually is having such a positive effect in many ways around the world, because of the growth in the telehealth space. And that is going to change the way that we get health treatment over the years and make it more equitable. Anyway, so modern day Britain, and this young boy who was dying couldn't get to hospital. So I was a volunteer driver, and I was driving along, and he went quiet. I looked over to him, and he had this tear just slowly going down his face, and he was sobbing, not crying. He was sobbing. There's sort of deeper emotion in my mind anyway to a sob. And I naturally and incorrectly assumed he was sobbing because he was dying, but he wasn't. What was happening was he was on his phone. His mates, so-called, were ridiculing him because he'd lost his hair because he was having chemo. So his last few days of his life were spent through his mates making him feel bad. And so it's really interesting because it grounds me in SafetoNet when we talk about grooming and paedophiles and so on, and clearly that's a key reason why we exist, but also children are horrible to each other, and even more so in the digital world because it's a 24/7 style problem. So this is a business for us which I'm so motivated and passionate about. And it's not about money. It's about safeguarding as many children as we possibly can. And a byproduct of that is wealth creation. And that's the way we look at it. And when we take investors, for example, we dig deep to check that they understand the mission. Because we're pioneers, as many of the people I know watching this are. And when you're pioneers, quite frankly, you spend a lot of time making things up as you go along. You're walking on paths that nobody else have walked on before. So you're bound to trip and make mistakes. We need our shareholders, our investors, to understand that we're not going to get all of this right. It's a complex problem that we're squaring up to. And so forgive us our sins a few times. That doesn't mean I'm looking for an easy life. You know, I'm totally capable of making tons of mistakes, and I'm sure I will make more in the future, but I'm prepared to take decisions where they need to be taken. And so there you go. That's used up the entire time slot of my life. I did get a 25-yard swimming certificate when I was 9, really proud of that. And also I have a Blue Peter badge. And
this is your life.
Thank you very much. Amen.
So no, that's brilliant, thanks. And a really like in-depth, great introduction to the purpose and the motives as to why you built SafetoNet. And you know, from my perspective, obviously we've worked together in about 3 or 4 years ago in the early days of Notwics, which we really enjoyed. I'm just sort of curious if you were one of those parents that heard your comments on SafetoNet or your introduction, where can we buy SafetoNet? Where is it a product that we download and it's permissible via the telco providers? Just kind of, if you can give us a bit more sort of color on the actual business itself, the AI perhaps as well is something I'm always really interested in. And I'm sure you've grown since those 4 years ago, and obviously we worked together. I think it was near London Bridge, I think, from memory. The office was like, I'm sure changed now, but yeah, so just a bit more on the sort of customer focus and the tech and the team, I think would probably be the 3 areas that
okay, so I'll try and position this without boring you, but essentially we've learned through our research prior to even starting the company the market for keeping children safe online is known, or has historically been known, as parental controls. And parental controls classically is more about you as a mum or a dad controlling screen time for your child and a bit of web filtering and not much else. And we've learned that actually parents, whilst they might buy that technology, they don't keep it for very long because it causes conflict. Back to the point I was making earlier, is that you can't spy or intrude on your child's life because they'll cause so much havoc that in the end you'll just dump the technology. And so we position ourselves way away from parental controls, albeit there is a natural link. But to give you an example, I suppose, as to how we position ourselves and why we're so different, we're more holistic in our approach. We're interested in the safeguarding and well-being of the child. And to be able to follow that route, you have to try and contextualize what the child is doing on their phone and why. So why are they saying what they're saying? And I suppose it's like, what is the difference between banter and aggression? And so to be able to do this, we are absolutely in the field of deep tech, and in particular behavioural analytics. That's actually my background. And so the analogy would be, in parental controls, what do we think is worse? Do we think it's the boy that's spending 8 hours a day shooting up people on Call of Duty? Or is it the girl that spends 1 minute talking to somebody who isn't who he says he is? And that's the positioning that we take. So it's all about trying to contextualize what the child is doing in the moment, in real time. And that's crucial. So we tackled this by saying, no, parental controls had its day, but actually any of us that's ever played around with parental controls knows you can beat it quickly and it causes this conflict. And so we learned that whilst clearly there won't be a parent on the planet that doesn't want to keep their children safe, interestingly enough, they're prepared to spend £9.99 a month on Spotify, but £5 a month for parental controls, I'm not so sure, really. And so we learned this. We used Apple's design thinking methodology of market research, which I'm, by the way, useless at because I tend to lead the witness somewhat. What do you mean you don't like my idea? And so we have far more intelligent people than me in the business. And dare I say it, and let's hope she's not listening, my wife, and who co-founded the business with me. She has far more empathy when people don't agree with her. And so we did this research, and we learned that it was more about this content than it was about how much time you spend on your device. Even though there is a correlation, clearly there is. You know, if you spend all day driving, you're more likely to have an accident than the person that just nips down to the local shop. So we get it. So there is a link, but fundamentally, that's why SafetoNet, I think, is now doing so well and is grow so quickly, because we tackle in this more holistic and way. So in brief, what we do is we built what we call an intelligent safeguarding keyboard. And crucial to this is technology using artificial intelligence that's using the processing power of the child's device. This is not cloud-based tech. And so the keyboard replaces the native keyboard provided by Apple or Samsung or whoever, Google, whoever it is, whoever's operating system you're using. And it guides a child in real time as they're interfacing with that keyboard. And so it's designed to educate them and help them to grow up to be safer digital citizens without really interfering too much. And the way it does that is using behavioural analytics. So it's the speed with which they type, the pressure with which they type, how often autocorrect goes into overdrive and so on. And the faster I talk and the more exaggerated I become and the more emotional I can become, something has happened. Clearly, you've wound me up, Chris, for whatever it may well be. You've gone and wound me up. And so we're going to get into a bit of a ding dong and we start to jab. You'll talk over me, I'll talk over you, shorter sentences, shorter words, I'll fluff my lines and all the rest of it. Well, behavioural analytics, you can pick up a ton of stuff. It's cerebrally, it's really interesting stuff, this. And so you can pick up a ton of stuff before you've even looked at the words the child is typing. And we learned early on through this process, trial and error, that we could start to detect different emotions, fear, anxiety, stress, and so on, through behavioural analytics and a good dose of natural language processing. And then we started to build a team of cyber psychologists. And this is sort of a new discipline that most of us didn't really know existed, and certainly didn't exist, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and started understanding the world of academia and how they'd done research into this whole area of why people do what they do online and the growth of social networks and all the rest of it. And so we started to teach our algorithms sort of probability statistics, and started to correlate emotion to behavioral patterns to words to this sort of evidential proof, I suppose, as to why people do what they do online. So, for example, that means we know that if a young girl or boy is showing signs of fear at 8 on a Sunday evening, we know there's a 73% chance they're being bullied. And we know that if any of us contribute to a YouTube thread and our comment is between 3 and 8 words in length, we know without even looking at the words, there's a 70% chance that those words have been harmful or hurtful in some way. And we've got tons and tons and tons of statistics. And the beauty of AI and ML is that we're creating more and more and more. And of course, the more we build our big data model, the more accurate our algorithms become at detecting threat and guiding the child, and crucially filtering in real time harmful content. I'll come back to that in a second. The more that data, the more accurate, therefore the better we become at safeguarding, therefore that's mission success. So for me, it's all about the accuracy of our AI, because it translates into genuine positive impact on a child's life, but balancing their rights to privacy and all the things that I mentioned earlier. And so the proudest thing that I've achieved in my life, way beyond the Blue Peter badge, I'm being flippant, I shouldn't be really, because in the summer last year, our software, which was being used by a 14-year-old girl in California, alerted her mum and dad to serious concern. They intervened, went to her room, and she was cutting herself. And she was taken to hospital, and thankfully she's now in recovery. But her mum and dad have said to us that without our software doing what it did, well, we can all work out what could have happened. So everything else now becomes totally irrelevant. Now, we've done that once. We may have done it more times, but possibly don't know. We know we've had positive impact on a number of times, many number of times. But I now want our company to save 100 lives, 1,000 lives, 100 lives, 1 million lives, until such time as the world gets its act together and realizes that these devices, these platforms, this technology should be safe out of the box. And fantastic news is that just before Christmas in London, Secretary of State Oliver Dowden, DCMS, from SafetoNet's offices, so another proud moment in our history, announced the forthcoming online harms legislation. Now, this is crucial, utterly crucial. I think it's going to be a pivotal moment in the world, full stop. And I'm not exaggerating with the potential impact of what he announced. It will become illegal if you, as a business, operate a platform where users generate content, if you don't look out after their interests and safeguard them, especially children. And you will be fined 10% of your global revenue. And in time, this law will be enhanced, and you will also at least be charged with a criminal act if you haven't done it. Yeah. And the great news about this is the UK, very easy to knock government, isn't it? Very, very easy. But in this instance, they need a pat on the back. Well, ish, they're a bit slow in doing this, but anyway, they've done it now. The UK is leading the way in online safety, and we should all be proud of that. And that is going to change the world. And we can already feel a breeze building, hopefully up to a wind and a storm. We all remember when GDPR was enacted, most of us did nothing for a while and then woke up and thought, oh, bloody hell, I better do it today. That procrastination monkey set in. Same going to happen here. And I think there's going to be a moral duty for those that don't necessarily fall under the scope of this law. So any of us have a duty to look after the interests of our users and make sure they're safe online. And now there's legislation coming.
Can I, that's amazing. Can I just ask, I remember a few years back, we were always talking about how or where the big US tech giants are on this. I suppose in the last year or two, you know, TikTok's become one of the main, if I look at my kids, well, they're, you know, my daughter just kind of lives on TikTok. Also, you know, the evolution of gaming and communication through gaming, the Fortnites and the Robloxes, you know, the other two platforms that the kids, if we didn't have in COVID and lockdown, you know, I don't know what they'd be doing. But, you know, I'm just like curious, you say the winds of change are warming. Any of those companies, any that I mentioned, are they starting to realise and take on, I suppose, pastoral responsibilities here, or is it still a challenge?
It's absolutely still a challenge. TikTok, to be fair to them, you know, we've spoken to some of their team members, and they genuinely get the online safety problem. They absolutely get it, but they haven't yet adapted or adopted technology like SafetoNets. See, the future of gaming, the future of online interaction, it's all about live. It's all about in the moment. And that not just that doesn't just rely to what you stream and what you watch, but also about what you film on your device. And of course, that relates to sexting and so on. And these platforms are still carrying this content, and they've got to stop it, because sexting leads to shaming, and suicide rates around the world are through the roof for children. The problem is that these technology giants, fundamentally, their commercial interests do not align with keeping children safe online. I mean, let's be honest, SafetoNet shouldn't exist at all. We shouldn't need to be here, because these should have been safe out the box. It was, what, 50.5 years ago, we managed to put a man on the moon. How on earth can we not build an algorithm that detects in real time harmful content? Well, the answer is actually you can, because SafetoNet has done it. Why hasn't Facebook? I mean, Facebook and the others can employ graduating talent out of Stanford, you know, and pay them $500,000 a year, your first job. We can't compete with things like that. How can we get the very best? We actually motivate our team and bring them together because of the mission and so on. But so no, they haven't done enough. There's signs that some are. You're absolutely right to focus on gaming platforms. Mums and dads think that kids are upstairs playing games. Well, they are playing games, but whilst they're doing it, they're talking to the people that they're playing games with who they've never met. Mm-hmm. And so one of the big objectives for 2021 for SafetoNet is to commercialize its Safe to Watch product. Safe to Watch is artificial intelligence using the processing power of the phone, algorithms that don't burn the battery of the phone, that can detect and filter harmful content in live video. And so you asked about 3 hours ago our route to market and how do mums and dads get it. We're actually a B2B2C. So our model is to sell to these platforms. It's to sell to the telcos and the handset manufacturers. In my view, when you go in post-COVID, and there's going to be a rush to the high street, in my opinion, because we all want to gain that social interaction again. When you next go into your high street telco store, O2, EE, Vodafone, if you're listening to this, if the salesman, when you're buying that phone for your child, does not tell you about the cyber safety technology you must have on it, I don't care whether it's SafetoNets or not. If they don't offer it to you, turn around and walk out, because why should we have to wait for legislation for what is morally so obvious? Let's be honest. Yeah. And so what we've done to try and prove that point, and I know most people watching this will think I'm mad already, but essentially just before the end of the year, we acquired 82 telco stores in Germany. We did it through a partnership with a brilliant company that's already got 250 high street stores. And so what these 82 stores will do, they'll be rebranded as SafetoNet family stores, and you will go in and you will look to buy your iPhone or your Samsung Galaxy, whatever it may well be, for your nearest and dearest child who has bullied you and cajoled you and pressured you into buying it for them. But you will not be able to buy it without our technology on it. And so it's an experiment, but we think it's an experiment that will work. And then I will publicly shame every CEO of every telco for not doing the same. Because if you look at this, let's say Facebook never bother. Let's say TikTok never bother, Snap never bother, and the latest Ujimi app that hasn't been invented yet doesn't bother. Well, okay, fine. The lowest common denominator is the device itself. If the child doesn't have the device, then they can't play the game. You've got to give them the device, but the device and the network it's on is the common denominator. So that's our approach. Our technology is application agnostic, and so it works on Facebook, it works on WhatsApp, it works on all of these platforms. So if they don't do it, don't worry, we'll do it.
It's amazing to me that once you have access to the keyboard, it's kind of unlimited of what you can do from an analytics point of view, right? But it all starts with having access to the keyboard, which can make it app agnostic and all this sort of thing. So it's really, really crucial part of it that, is just inspired to me.
Yeah, it was one of those moments, you know what it's like. Most of us on this session know what it's like, necessity is the mother of invention. We were struggling to work out how to crack this problem.
How are we going to solve this?
Yeah.
I got it.
And I will claim right here, right now, it was me that invented it. And if any of my colleagues are listening to this and
turn it off right now.
But yeah, so it was one of those creative sessions, and it was that, that old phrase, the light bulb came on sort of moment. And our knowledge, we're the only company in the world that's filtering through that keyboard. There's one or two others that provide keyboard technology that sort of guides a child, but it doesn't filter. Back to the poor little girl in California, it has to filter if the risk gets too high.
Yeah, one of the from another episode that we did, a VC that we had on was talking about one of her golden holy grails of talking to entrepreneurs is for them to know which metrics they need to be tracking that is specific to their business. And something you said, for me, I think sums up exactly what that key metric is going to be for SafetoNet is lives saved. I mean, what a great metric to have to measuring the success of your business.
I mean, you're absolutely right. Number of children safeguarded. And that's on the basis that the technology does what I say it does, and it genuinely safeguards them. It's really interesting. I've spoken at a few events every now and then on the art of raising money and all the rest of it. When we pick our investors, note those words. When we pick our investors, we talk about KidX. We don't talk about 10x. We talk about KidX. How many children will we safeguard? And as long as we're broadly speaking astute businessmen and women, we know how to monetize that, and therefore that ultimately turns into profit and a strong balance sheet, and therefore wealth creation. But ultimately, that's the measure for SafetoNet, is number of children we safeguard.
It's amazing. So you mentioned earlier, Richard, a slight change of tack here. Well, not really, but 5 companies founded successfully. You've been through the journey, you've had the ups and downs. Just, if you were to pick Richard's top tips or top things to avoid for founders, because a number of obviously the listeners are founders, aspiring founders, what would they be? What would you sort of pick as your tip and your kind of banana skin to avoid?
So the key to everything is money. Obviously, it's the oxygen that a business breathes upon, and so to me, it's the art of raising money. And I'm not a fan, as you know, Chris, of rounds. I don't understand a round. What's the point of a round? If you want to invest, please do invest. I'll take your money right now. And the way to manage and structure your business to be able to do that is to ensure that you've got the authority through your articles to continually issue shares without having to go back to your shareholders to get their support and their vote to allow you to do it. So structure the business from the outset so that you have the authority to issue, and then take every meeting, never turn down a meeting. Now, even though, oh God, it's that meeting Chris again. Just do it, because you never know who Chris might well know. And you know full well that actually it was Notwics that really was the platform against which SafetoNet suddenly got investment. That night we raised, I think, £250,000 when we could all meet in the same building. Yeah. So you don't need rounds, not in the early days as you're making it up as you're going along. We all make it up as we go along, right? So the one thing we all know about your business plan, one thing that's categorically true about your business plan is that it's wrong. You won't hit your figures, you'll miss them, you'll overachieve them. And so just sell with passion, understand the reason why you exist, have a genuine problem that you're fixing, but keep raising when anybody wants it. The UK is such a fertile country for raising money, especially from high net worths because of EIS. And I understand that the government is not going to fiddle with EIS in the budget in March. I really hope they don't, because the SafetoNet, we've now raised over £25 million, of which 20 million has been EIS investments from high net worths and ultra high net worths.
Wow.
So yeah, take every meeting, push hard. It's very hard to be a founder of a startup. It's horrible. It's a struggle. It's scary.
So look, the banana skin, I think, we'd love to hear a bit more on your wisdom.
Yeah. So I don't think I've still yet mastered this banana skin, and it's about setting realistic expectations for your investors. And it's married with something which I'm a firm believer in. You spend a lot of time raising money, and eventually, typically investors, they're investing in you as much as they are the business, and you must never forget that. And one of the things that I'm proud of is that I talk to all of our investors. If they ask me a question, they'll get an answer as quickly as I can possibly get, good or bad. I go out of my way to communicate with them. I proactively communicate with them. And other than the moral duty you've got of doing that, and if you could argue the duty anyway as a founder CEO of doing that, if you talk to them regularly, good and bad, they will invest regularly. They'll invest again, and you can start to build up a really strong network, because especially high net worths, they will tell their mates that there's a brag opportunity here. I've invested in SafetoNet and look how quickly it's growing, and sort of stuff. And so you've got to really work it. But where I get it wrong is I send out a quarterly written shareholders update. I personalize it. I get the team to record short videos and everything else. And we get very excited very quickly because we've got an incoming opportunity from the biggest company in the world. And I go and bleat it out on the basis I must have landed them, even though I've only spoken to them for 1 minute. And I've got to learn, I know, to calm down the exuberance somewhat, because it does come back to bite you, and rightly so, because you get challenged in 6 months' time. What happened with that intergalactic opportunity that was going to make us all a squillion and all the rest of it. So I think being realistic in how you talk is very important.
And then sort of looking, I suppose, a bit further afield, to the year ahead. Obviously none of us have a crystal ball, but tech, data, health tech, 3 kind of clear platforms that probably are going to power digital in the UK economy. I'm just sort of curious, what do you think we're going to rebound very strongly, or start the rebound this year? 2021 could really see, we've got Deliveroo IPO, and we could see the challenger banks potentially IPO. Do you think our star potentially, as we hopefully move out of COVID, digital, leadership in cyber, child safety, security, like yourselves, we're going to see a real ascendancy of high quality UK tech companies becoming, leaders, and potentially, hopefully, staying, rooted to create jobs in the UK. So just sort of, I know it's a big ask, but what's your sort of bigger picture sort of thought?
I think, Chris, there's 2 ends of the spectrum. If you look at the stock markets for tech tech stock at the moment. It's so frothy. I mean, it's unbelievable. You just look at Apple's recent results through COVID and so on. Enormous growth, phenomenal growth. You look what Amazon has achieved and so on. So I think if we push that part to one side, because that almost has a life of its own, but I do think there's a correction somewhere that has to come sooner or later. And there is an enormous amount of money available for investing in good quality businesses. I think that the challenge of COVID has been, certainly for us at SafetoNet, is in lockdown 1, there was a real spirit of adventure, and it was relatively easy to motivate the team through lockdown working remotely. But I think we're beginning to lose productivity to a level now where, because we're missing our colleagues and that social interaction, and those younger members of our team where maybe we're their first career, you know, they're not in the office picking up the throwaway statement from the guy sitting 3 desks behind them style stuff. And I worry about how that might have an impact on new startups as well, because really you need a team to start a business. And if you can't be in the same room feeding each other, you'll lose that entrepreneurial flair.
The energy. Yeah.
Yeah, and so maybe there'll be a bit of a dearth for a while. I hope not. Because equally so, there's lots of people sitting at home coming up with brand new ideas. But most ideas come through you interacting with something and finding something across.
I kind of, we've written about what we perceive in the next 12 to 18 months as a potential funder gap, where we've obviously, as you mentioned, there are pots and pots of capital, lots of new funds created in 2019 and 2020 coming to the market. I can't remember I think it was around 50 billion of capital ready to go. But what we see, and obviously you know this, Richard, from the times we've worked with you, you know, the very early days, there doesn't seem to be much pre-seed. I'm looking at leaving my job at, you know, a big tech or consumer company and setting up on my own. I've got a developer down the road to work with us. It's that bit that, you know, I suppose the people in the garage kind of philosophy or mindset that really seems to be missing at the moment, like you say. And I do think it is that, you know, they can't be there can't be teams, they can't be in a workspace together. And I think we will see what I've termed a funder gap potentially in 12 to 18 months, which will, you know, Series A is hot at the moment. You know, the early stage is really hot. There's VCs fighting each other to get into some of these deals, and valuations are rocketing. But, you know, there's not a lot before that at the moment. And you know, you think about Series A in 12 to 18 months, that could have a big gap. So, you know, no crystal ball, but, you know, just talking to people, which is what we do a lot of, and listening to great people like you, it's alarming, I think, the situation we're in.
No doubts. You know, the stimulant to great ideas is often conversation. I remember the first company I set up way back when came about through me talking to a couple of mates down the pub. And yeah, we were talking about the problem, and sooner or later it was, you know, I reckon I might be able to fix that problem. And then, you know, you have the drive to go off and do it, and you go and talk to others, and you try your lines and test your words and see what people think, and whether they look back at you and think you're a crackpot, or, oh, that's, you know, I 2 businesses in particular of mine, I remember twice. I remember them in 2 occasions with 2 businesses, people saying, God, I wish I'd had that idea. And when you get that, you tend to know when you're onto something. So I'm tired of Zoom call after Zoom call after Zoom call after Zoom call, which is work. So of an evening now, I don't want to be staring at my laptop. So therefore, I'm not as sociable as I was. And so I think the catalyst to great ideas, possibly that's not there at the moment, but I'm pretty sure that pretty much every one of us can't wait to go and meet up again, to socialise and so on. And,
yeah, with that in mind, that I suppose looking at the future of work tag of SafetoNet, you I imagine will potentially move back to that office, and maybe people will come in a couple of days a week. I mean, you're thinking in that way for the summer or the autumn?
Yeah, Yeah, I think my views are changing a bit. If you'd asked me this question 6 months ago, I'd have said absolute hybrid, 2 days in, 3 days at home. And now I might go for 4 days in and 1 day at home. We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see. Our offices, UK offices, are in London, so most people have to commute. And there's going to be a while for most people to accept being on a squash train again. That I don't want to ask team members to do that. No. But as I said earlier, I think productivity is waning because we can't be with each other. Yeah. And so at the moment, I can't think of much worse than me getting on a train, going into London, getting on a tube and all the rest of it. But I miss my colleagues. I miss the fun. I miss the banter, and I miss that creativity. So we will definitely be more office-centric than we have been.
And would that be driven by, perhaps when people have been vaccinated, that you would want that to be the case?
It's totally. I've read the reports of some businessmen and women saying you can't come into the office if you haven't been vaccinated. I tend to agree with that, and I know we all have a choice and all the rest of it, but fundamentally, we got to think and work as a team, act as a team, and look out for each other. And I think that COVID has taught us that we need to look out for each other more, and I hope we forget that.
So just coming towards the end of our great chat, I've really enjoyed it. Couple of questions I always like to ask. Well, one's a bit quirky and very related to SafetoNet, that it's one of the very few very successful scale-ups in the UK that is a family business, which I find quite amazing. I'm just curious, obviously the good lady Sharon has recently become an OBE, and congratulations. I shared them before, but just saying that online. Just family. Obviously, we all spend a lot of time with our family at the moment in COVID. I'm not too sure I could perhaps set up a business with Mrs. Lowe and maybe some of the offspring, but clearly, I think your son's in his 20s. So, just kind of how's that been? Would be the first question, and then the last question is kind of what apart from Chelsea, outside of SafetoNet, anything that you'd like to share in terms of how you unwind, maybe tips for founders and investors that are listening? What are your burning passions outside of obviously the safety of children, which is obviously a super important thing, and I imagine quite exhausting in terms of a job to have. So so
to the family business, I'm intrigued that that's how you see it, because we don't see it that way. When Sharon and I and Jack, Georgina, we had the idea and we sat around the table and we spoke about it. That was how it was founded, and we started off with just us working out how this thing might develop and so on. But of course we have a team that we employ lots and lots of people now.
How many people are you up to now, Richard?
Way too many, Chris. Way too many. Well, with the acquisitions that we made late last year, we're now, I think, and I'm scared to say this, about 200, 205, 210, something like that.
Incredible.
And tragically, who I haven't met most of them face to face. I've only been able to talk to them over a Zoom call. So I don't want to see us we use the word family a lot, and our high street stores in Germany, SafetoNet family stores, that's it's interesting enough. It does influence so many of the decisions that we take in our business, because it is all about family. But what I do know is that no business is easy to run, especially a startup. It's as scary as hell, and we live on a knife edge all the time. The checks are bigger now, so the risks are just bigger. But I always call it the struggle, the founder's struggle. It's so hard, and we still have so many sleepless nights. We just do. But I do know, by the way, that comfort kills vigilance, so I don't have too much of a problem with it. It is a founder's lot. But if Sharon didn't understand why I worked such long hours, and I didn't understand why she worked such long hours, it would put a strong degree of tension on our relationship, I'm sure. And pre-lockdown, I was traveling too much. I was always on an airplane, and so that's not really healthy. And so I think, quite frankly, I don't know whether it was. I know 100% SafetoNet would not be here if it wasn't for Sharon and the support she's given and the dedication. And by the way, nobody deserves that honour greater than her, not least because she has to put up with me. She deserves a queendom. She doesn't deserve an OBE. She deserves or whatever. And in terms of how do I switch off? I don't think I do, to be honest. I don't think I do. I wish I could say, oh yeah, I found the magic formula. I go and dig holes and fill them in again or whatever. But in some way, my brain, whether I like it or not, is always working. You know what it's like. Even going to see our beloved football club, I would, especially when they're losing, my brain's trying to work out the next problem that we've got to fix. But yeah.
Okay. Well, look, I mean, I've really enjoyed catching up, Richard. So impressed by your success and so happy for you. And obviously 2021 is certainly a year that is set up for some potentially big new goals and achievements. And I'm sure you're going to make those and succeed and continue to succeed, because clearly, you are, as I've always said, solving a massive problem that as a parent, I really know it is that massive problem that a lot of parents face. So, well done and keep up the hard work, and thanks for taking the time to share all your thoughts and wisdom. It's been really insightful, both from Ant and Chris, not the Saturday night takeaway duo, the better looking version. I'd like to say a big thank you, and and Anthony, I don't know if you've got any comments before we sign off.
No, just a massive thank you for your time and for sharing with all of us, and yeah, really enjoyed hearing it.
Okay. Well, it's a real pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to ramble on for 3/4 of an hour.
Brilliant ramble. All right, thanks, Richard.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye.